Vice President Mike Pence made it perfectly clear to President Trump over and over again he would not and could not legally overturn the election to keep him in power. When Pence refused to obey him on January the 6th, President Trump unleashed a violent mob on him at the Capitol. That was the stunning case that the January 6th committee laid out at its public hearing today. For the first time, we heard testimony about a heated Oval Office phone call that President Trump had with his VP on the morning of the deadly riot. It was one last attempt to pressure Mike Pence to do what Trump wanted.
The conversation was pretty heated.
Did you hear any part of the phone call, even if just the end that the president was speaking from?
I did, yes.
All right, and what did you hear?
So as I was dropping off the note, I remember hearing the word wimp. Either he called him a wimp. I don't remember if he said, "You are a wimp, you'll be a wimp." Wimp is the word I remember.
It's also been reported that the president said to the vice president that something to the effect of, "You don't have the courage to make a hard decision."
Worse, I don't remember exactly either, but something like that, yeah. You're not tough enough to make the call.
It was a different tone than I'd heard him take with the vice president before.
Something to the effect, the wording's wrong. I made the wrong decision 4 or 5 years ago.
And the word that she relayed to that the president called the vice president, I apologize for being impolite, but do you remember what she said her father called him?
The P word.
And just 30 minutes after that call, President Trump headed to his Stop the Steal rally on the Ellipse down from the White House and urged that massive crowd of his supporters to march on the Capitol, where Mike Pence was preparing to certify Joe Biden's victory.
And Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
I'm hearing reports that Pence caved. I'm telling you, if Pence caved, we're going to drag through the streets. You politicians are going to get drugged through the streets.
I guess the hope is that there's such a show of force here that Pence will decide to do the right thing, according to Trump.
Bring out Pence!
Bring it on!
Bring out Pence! Mike Pence has betrayed the United States of America! You, Mike Pence! Mike Pence has betrayed this president, and he has betrayed the people of the United States, and we will never, ever forget!
It's real simple. Pence betrayed us, which apparently everybody knew he was going to, and the president mentioned it like 5 times when he talked. You can go back and watch the president's video.
Well, after the rioters had breached the Capitol and Secret Service had rushed Mike Pence into an office, President Trump sent out this tweet telling his followers that Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. Here's what President Trump's own White House Deputy Press Secretary testified to the committee about that tweet.
So then when that tweet, the Mike Pence tweet, was sent out, I remember us saying that that was the last thing that needed to be tweeted at that moment. The situation was already bad, and so it felt like he was pouring gasoline on the fire by tweeting that.
The January 6th committee revealed that the rioters came within just 40 feet of the vice president as Secret Service agents rushed him to a secure underground location.
Rioters breached the crypt, 1 floor below the vice president.
The Secret Service couldn't control the situation and do their job of keeping him safe.
At 2:26 p.m., Secret Service rushed Vice President Pence down the stairs.
We moved pretty quickly down the stairs and through various hallways and tunnels to the secure location. Upon arriving there, there was further discussion as to whether or not we were going to leave the Capitol complex or stay where we were.
Vice President Pence and his team ultimately were led to a secure location where they stayed for the next 4.5 hours, barely missing rioters a few feet away.
An informant later told the FBI that the far-right group, the Proud Boys, quoting now, would have killed Mike Pence had they gotten their hands on him during that riot. The January 6th committee released never-before-seen photos of Mr. Pence. These photos hiding in that underground location beneath the Capitol. The vice president's general counsel, Greg Jacob, was with him throughout the chaos. He testified that Mike Pence refused to leave that spot and instead stayed bunkered to finish his duty once the rioters left.
The vice president did not want to take any chance that the world would see the vice president of the United States fleeing the United States Capitol. He was determined that we would complete the work that we had set out to do that day, that it was his constitutional duty to see through, and that the rioters who had breached the Capitol would not have the satisfaction of disrupting the proceedings beyond the day on which they were supposed to be completed.
The vice president did not testify, but much of today's testimony surrounded John Eastman. He's a conservative lawyer who was the architect of Trump's dubious legal theory that the vice president of the United States had the power to block the count of electoral votes and essentially decide for himself who won the election. President Trump's own White House attorney, Eric Hirschman, testified that he confronted Eastman and told him his legal theory was completely crazy.
You're saying that you believe the vice president, acting as president of the Senate, can be the sole decision maker as to, under your theory, who becomes the next president of the United States? And you said yes. And I said, are you out of your effing mind? Right? And that was pretty blunt. I said, you're completely crazy. I said, you're going to turn around and tell 78 plus million people in this country that your theory is this is how you're going to invalidate their votes because you think the election was stolen? And I said, they're not going to tolerate that. He said, you're going to cause riots in the streets. And he said words to the effect of there's been violence in the history of our country, Eric, to protect the democracy or protect the republic.
Mike Pence's general counsel testified that the vice president realized back in early December that it would be wrong and unconstitutional to do what President Trump wanted him to do.
The vice president's first instinct when he heard this theory was that there was no way that our framers, who abhorred concentrated power, who had broken away from the tyranny of George III, would ever have put one person, particularly not a person who had a direct interest in the outcome because they were on the ticket for the election, in a role to have decisive impact on the outcome of the election.
Mr. Pence's counsel testified that Attorney Eastman admitted in a meeting before the president that his legal theory would violate federal law and would stand no chance in the Supreme Court, and that no other vice president should ever do what he was asking Mike Pence to do.
I said, John, if the vice president did what you were asking him to do, we would lose 9-0 in the Supreme Court, wouldn't we? And he initially started it, well, I think maybe you would lose only 7-2. And after some further discussion, acknowledged, well, yeah, you're right, we would lose 9-0. John, back in 2000, you weren't jumping up and saying Al Gore had this authority to do that. You would not want Kamala Harris to be able to exercise that kind of authority in 2024 when I hope Republicans will win the election, and I know you hope that too, John. And he said, absolutely. Al Gore did not have a basis to do it in 2000. Kamala Harris shouldn't be able to do it in 2024, but I think you should do it today.
The January 6th committee also revealed evidence that suggests the lawyer, Eastman, knew what he was doing might be illegal.